How can a nation possessing such vast resources find itself so far from realizing its potential? For Russia, the answer is tangled within a network of systemic shortcomings. Despite holding some of the world's largest reserves of oil, gas, and minerals, the country is grappling with a severe economic downturn, which is only exacerbated by its ongoing war in Ukraine. The repercussions are far-reaching, reshaping global energy markets, placing a strain on international alliances, and uncovering deep vulnerabilities within its military structures. Today, on our channel, we'll delve into the concealed narrative behind Russia's failing economy and how it is impacting its ambitions on the battlefield. So, like, comment, and subscribe, because understanding the real story beneath the headlines is more crucial than ever. Why has Russia's economy struggled to reach its full capabilities? Russia's economic issues cannot be solely attributed to recent occurrences, but rather stem from long-standing, intrinsic problems that have stymied its expansion and adaptability. Despite being a resource-rich nation with a massive land area and substantial energy assets, Russia's economy has consistently failed to branch out beyond its reliance on raw material exports. This overdependence has made the country susceptible to market volatility and external pressures, such as sanctions and shifting global demand. The current sanctions imposed by Western nations as a reaction to the conflict in Ukraine have further revealed the precarious nature of Russia's economic framework. Since 2022, these measures have targeted essential sectors such as oil, gas, and technology, significantly curtailing Russia's capacity to modernize its infrastructure and industries. When compared to 2020, Russia's gas exports have fallen by 31 to 47% in 2040, where new markets are limited, and by 13 to 38% under a shift to Asia strategy. This decline has placed considerable pressure on its fiscal capability, forcing the government to increase domestic borrowing and reduce funding for non-military sectors. One of the most obvious shortcomings in Russia's economic design is the concentration of riches and resources within the grasp of a small elite. Russian oligarchs control a considerable segment of the economy, leaving other sectors underdeveloped. This imbalance not only intensifies income disparity, but also stifles innovation, as these sectors require minimal technological advancement in contrast to sectors like manufacturing or information technology. Corruption has compounded these challenges. Transparency International's Corruption Perceptions Index, or CPI, for 2023 saw Russia score 26 points out of 100, landing at 141st place out of 180. This systemic corruption has resulted in inefficient allocation of resources, with large portions of public money diverted away from crucial investments and into private hands. As a result, infrastructure projects remain incomplete and vital services, like healthcare and education, are underfunded. The consequences of these intrinsic failures are also reflected in the labor market. Over the course of the war, the growth of real disposable incomes by the end of 2024 will reach either 12.3% or a striking 18.6%. Assuming this year's increase reaches 7.2%, as projected in a consensus survey conducted by the Higher School of Economics Center for Development. However, with inflation accelerating sharply at the end of the year, the actual figure may be lower for ordinary Russians. This results in reduced purchasing power, declining living standards, and growing discontent. While state propaganda emphasizes resilience, independent surveys reveal rising dissatisfaction with the government's handling of economic challenges. Diverging international perspectives on Russia's economic trajectory underscore the complexity of the situation. Western analysts, such as those from the Financial Times, view these developments as evidence of a weakening global power. Conversely, Chinese media outlets, such as the Global Times, frame Russia's adjustments as a demonstration of its strength under Western pressure. These conflicting narratives highlight how economic realities are often interpreted through geopolitical lenses. Ultimately, Russia's economic decline is not simply a product of sanctions or war, but a reflection of decades of intrinsic inefficiencies, corruption, and short-sighted policies. Addressing these issues would require significant structural reforms, but such changes seem improbable under the current administration. As the economic strain intensifies, the long-term consequences of these systemic failings will mold Russia's trajectory both domestically and internationally. These observations, while based on diverse viewpoints, highlight the pressing requirement for a more sustainable and inclusive economic model. Remember to stay tuned until the end of the video, where we'll make some very important conclusions. Now let's move forward. How is Russia's economic crisis impacting its war effort? The convergence of Russia's economic difficulties and its military actions in Ukraine has revealed obvious vulnerabilities, especially in logistics and troop morale. The ongoing war underscores how economic fragility directly affects the battlefield, creating problems that hinder military effectiveness and contribute to systemic inefficiencies. Economic sanctions put in place by Western nations have profoundly disrupted Russia's capability to maintain supply chains vital for military operations. Reports from the beginning of 2024 highlight persistent deficiencies in essential provisions, including modern weaponry, spare parts, and even basic needs like fuel and ammunition. Ukrainian attacks on Russian supply depots and crucial transportation points have further intensified these logistical challenges. For example, in January of 2024, Ukrainian drones targeted a major ammunition depot in Belgorod, reducing available munitions for frontline troops and causing delays in replenishment efforts. Russia's dependence on outmoded infrastructure and Soviet-era logistics systems has also been brought into sharp focus. Numerous reports suggest that supply convoys often lack the necessary protection to travel safely through contested zones, resulting in considerable losses of material. Moreover, the absence of secure communication networks has allowed Ukrainian forces to intercept and disrupt supply routes, compounding the logistical problems. The wider economic downturn has directly influenced Russia's ability to sustain its war efforts. Reduced revenues from oil and gas exports, a major source of funding for the military, have compelled the Kremlin to prioritize short-term solutions over long-term planning. Analysts note that makeshift solutions, such as a reliance on poorly trained conscripts and outmoded equipment, reflect the pressure of diminishing financial resources. By mid-2024, leaked reports indicated that some Russian military units were resorting to crowdfunding platforms to purchase basic provisions, a testament to the dire state of provisioning. Economic limitations have also hindered technological progress within the armed forces. Western export restrictions on high-tech components have disrupted Russia's ability to produce precision-guided munitions and modern surveillance equipment. This has left Russian forces increasingly reliant on less accurate weaponry, which undermines their operational effectiveness and increases collateral damage. The logistical shortcomings combined with substandard living conditions for soldiers have taken a severe toll on morale. Reports from international media highlight that many Russian soldiers are poorly equipped with inadequate winter clothing and outmoded firearms. Incidents of food shortages and expired rations further intensify dissatisfaction among the ranks, fueling resentment towards military leadership. These challenges are compounded by the psychological stress of fighting a prolonged conflict. According to a 2024 report by the Moscow Times, desertion rates among Russian conscripts have risen sharply, with some soldiers citing the lack of clear objectives and poor treatment as key reasons for abandoning their posts. Efforts to impose discipline through punitive measures have only heightened discontent, creating a cycle of demoralization that hampers combat effectiveness. Perspectives on Russia's battlefield struggles vary across nations. Western analysts emphasize the systemic failures that stem from a mismanaged economy and outdated military doctrines. Meanwhile, Russian state media presents these challenges as temporary setbacks, highlighting the resilience of its forces in the face of external pressures. These different narratives emphasize the complexity of interpreting battlefield realities. Russia's economic collapse has created a ripple effect that extends into the heart of its military operations. From logistical bottlenecks to declining morale, the impact of economic fragility on the battlefield underscores the interconnectedness of a nation's economic health and its military capabilities. While these challenges may not immediately stop Russia's war effort, they reveal weaknesses that could shape the long-term path of the conflict. As global observers continue to monitor these developments, it is clear that economic resilience is as crucial as military strength in sustaining modern warfare. Are economic struggles breaking Russia's military spirit? The ripple effects of Russia's economic troubles have permeated its military, manifesting as strained resources, declining morale, and logistical challenges. As the financial foundation of the nation weakens, the impact on soldiers on the front lines has become a crucial issue, especially in the context of the continuing conflict in Ukraine. One of the most immediate consequences of economic instability is the lack of adequate supplies for troops. Reports from 2024 and early 2025 show continued shortages of essential items, including food, clothing, and medical supplies. Soldiers have described being issued outdated equipment, including rifles from the Soviet era, as well as protective gear that fails to meet modern battlefield standards. For example, in February of 2025, it was revealed that some Russian units lacked adequate winter clothing during operations in eastern Ukraine, a stark reminder of the logistical breakdown stemming from economic strain. Morale among troops has also suffered significantly. With insufficient support and outdated gear, many soldiers feel undervalued and expendable. Accounts from intercepted communications, shared by independent observers and confirmed by Western intelligence, highlight increasing disillusionment within the ranks. Soldiers frequently express frustration over extended deployments without adequate rest or clear objectives. This lack of clarity, combined with increasing reports of high casualty rates, exacerbates feelings of vulnerability and hopelessness among troops. Furthermore, delayed or insufficient wages add another layer to the crisis. According to reports from the Moscow Times, some soldiers have faced months of delays in receiving hazard pay, which was initially promised to incentivize military service. This financial instability not only affects the soldiers, but also impacts their families, leading to widespread discontent both on and off the battlefield. Analysts note that the economic pressures faced by soldiers' families have fueled a rise in desertions and refusals to return to combat zones. The mental toll of the conflict has also become obvious. Psychological support systems for soldiers remain underfunded and underdeveloped, leaving many to cope with trauma on their own. Data on the number of former Russian soldiers suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD, is scarce. Though as early as December of 2022, Russian psychologists had identified at least 100,000 military personnel as having the condition, according to the UK Defense Ministry. Another crucial issue is the widening gap between the Kremlin's rhetoric and the reality faced by soldiers. While state media portrays a narrative of resilience and strength, soldiers often encounter a starkly different reality. This dissonance fuels mistrust in leadership as troops witness firsthand the gap between promises made and the support provided. Analysts from Reuters suggest that this growing divide may have long-term implications for cohesion within the Russian armed forces. International perspectives on these issues vary. Some commentators argue that the challenges faced by Russian soldiers reflect systemic inefficiencies exacerbated by sanctions and prolonged conflict. Others suggest that the situation demonstrates the difficulty of sustaining a large-scale military operation without a robust and diversified economy. In summary, the economic struggles of Russia have directly impacted its military personnel, eroding morale and exposing systemic vulnerabilities. While various sources provide different interpretations of these challenges, the overarching narrative is one of strained resources, declining morale, and a military under pressure. These observations underscore the interconnectedness of economic stability and military effectiveness, particularly in the context of prolonged conflict. Is Russia losing its grip on global influence? Russia's economic instability, fueled by sanctions, mismanagement, and the prolonged conflict in Ukraine, has amplified its strategic vulnerabilities on the global stage. While the nation has historically relied on energy dominance and military strength to project power, recent developments have exposed weaknesses that could reshape its international influence. A key aspect of Russia's strategic dilemma lies in its diminishing leverage over global energy markets. Once a cornerstone of its geopolitical influence, Russian energy exports have suffered a severe blow due to sanctions imposed by Western nations. By 2030, Russian gas export revenues might fall by 55 to 80% compared to 2022, a year of record-high revenues for the Russian gas industry at $65 billion. This decline forced Moscow to offer steep discounts to buyers like China and India, weakening its bargaining power and shifting global energy alliances. Analysts have noted that Europe's swift transition away from Russian gas has further weakened Moscow's influence in a region that once depended heavily on its resources. Simultaneously, Russia's military strategy has revealed significant limitations. The sustained economic pressures have constrained the Kremlin's ability to modernize its military infrastructure and maintain an effective supply chain. According to recent reports from the Washington Post, the ongoing war has stretched Russia's defense capabilities thin, with outdated equipment and logistical failures undermining its ability to sustain prolonged campaigns. These weaknesses have not gone unnoticed by NATO, which has increased its defense cooperation and military spending, bolstering its presence in Eastern Europe and strengthening alliances that counterbalance Russia's ambitions. The impact extends beyond Europe. Traditional allies such as Belarus and Syria, while still aligned with Moscow, are reassessing the reliability of Russian support amid its economic and military challenges. Emerging powers, including China, have exploited Russia's vulnerabilities to negotiate more favorable terms for trade and investment. From the 5th of December of 2022 until the end of December of 2024, China purchased 46% of all Russia's coal exports, highlighting the shifting power dynamics in their partnership. Beijing's pragmatic approach underscores how Russia's diminished leverage affects its standing, even with supposed allies. Domestically, these global shifts are mirrored by growing discontent within Russia. Economic hardships exacerbated by the war have strained public trust in the Kremlin's ability to navigate the crisis. Rising inflation, unemployment, and reduced access to consumer goods have led to sporadic protests, particularly in regions heavily reliant on federal subsidies. The Moscow Times noted that dissatisfaction is not limited to urban centers, with rural areas increasingly voicing concerns about the long-term consequences of Russia's geopolitical isolation. Furthermore, the conflict in Ukraine has highlighted a critical strategic vulnerability: the inability to adapt to modern warfare. While Russia's military doctrine heavily relies on numerical superiority and traditional ground tactics, Ukraine's use of advanced Western technologies, including precision-guided missiles and unmanned aerial systems, has shifted the balance on the battlefield. These developments underscore the growing gap between Russia's military capabilities and those of its adversaries. As global observers assess these dynamics, perspectives vary. Western analysts often emphasize the strategic decline as an opportunity to reshape global power structures, while Russian state media portrays the situation as a temporary setback amid a broader struggle against Western hegemony. Meanwhile, neutral perspectives, such as those from Al Jazeera, argue that the geopolitical implications of Russia's challenges extend far beyond its borders, influencing energy markets, military alliances, and economic stability worldwide. In conclusion, Russia's strategic weaknesses reflect a broader shift in global power dynamics. The economic and military pressures resulting from the Ukraine conflict have diminished its ability to project influence both regionally and internationally. While Moscow may attempt to recalibrate its strategies, the long-term implications of these vulnerabilities remain profound, underscoring the complex interplay between economic stability, military capability, and geopolitical influence. These observations, shaped by diverse global perspectives, highlight the need for continued analysis and dialogue to navigate the evolving challenges of modern geopolitics. Can Russia's defense industry cope with economic and labor strain? Russia's military-industrial complex is under considerable pressure as economic and logistical challenges mount. A crucial issue is the severe shortage of skilled labor, with hundreds of thousands of workers conscripted or fleeing abroad to avoid service. Defense factories are relying on untrained workers, older laborers, and even prison inmates. This labor gap has slowed production and raised concerns about the quality of weapons being supplied to the front lines. Adding to this, many production facilities still rely on Soviet-era equipment. Without access to imported components, such as advanced microchips and precision parts, manufacturers are increasingly reverting to outdated systems like T-62 tanks. While serviceable, these relics of the past are no match for the advanced weaponry being used by NATO-backed Ukrainian forces. Sanctions have further squeezed Russia's defense capabilities. Russia now imports 70 to 90% of its computer chips from the People's Republic of China. Fuel shortages, caused by the reallocation of oil to military operations, have compounded these issues, creating inflationary pressures at home and logistical bottlenecks in the field. Reports indicate that broken tanks and abandoned vehicles have become symbols of these inefficiencies, undermining troop morale and operational readiness. Globally, perspectives on Russia's defense industry vary. Western analysts often highlight these shortcomings as evidence of systemic decline, while Russian state media frames them as growing pains in an ongoing effort to retool domestic production. Despite these efforts, the cracks in Russia's military infrastructure remain a critical vulnerability, emphasizing the precariousness of the nation's broader war effort. How is economic isolation reshaping Russia's global role? The economic costs of war are not confined to the battlefield. They ripple into the lives of civilians, compounding societal stress and discontent. With much of Russia's resources funneled into military operations, ordinary citizens are bearing the brunt of rising costs and deteriorating living standards. Inflation remains a key issue, driven by fuel shortages and disrupted supply chains. Food prices in particular have surged, with staples becoming increasingly inaccessible for lower-income households. Public services, including healthcare and education, are also feeling the strain, with funding redirected to defense spending. Hospitals face medicine shortages, and schools are operating with outdated resources. In some regions, local governments are struggling to maintain basic infrastructure, exacerbating feelings of neglect and marginalization. This economic hardship is particularly acute in rural areas, where infrastructure was already poor and access to resources limited. Protests and strikes have emerged as indicators of growing discontent. Independent reports suggest that even state employees, such as teachers and healthcare workers, have joined demonstrations despite the risks of government crackdowns. Meanwhile, the Kremlin has sought to suppress dissent through propaganda, emphasizing national unity and portraying economic hardship as a necessary sacrifice for security. These societal strains risk long-term consequences. As dissatisfaction grows, maintaining public support for the war becomes increasingly difficult. Russia's leaders face the challenge of balancing domestic stability with the escalating demands of a protracted conflict, a precarious position that highlights the interconnectedness of war, economics, and public sentiment. Russia's economic and military challenges are not just numbers on a page or headlines in the news. They are a reflection of deeper systemic issues, revealing the intricate interplay between governance, resilience, and global dynamics. As we have explored, the cost of war is not only financial but profoundly human, affecting lives and reshaping nations. This channel's content is intended for informational and educational purposes only. While we strive to provide balanced analyses on political and military topics, the views expressed do not reflect those of any government organization or political entity. On our channel, we believe in fostering understanding through informed analysis. If today's discussion has sparked your curiosity or raised questions, share your thoughts in the comments. Let's create a space for dialogue where diverse perspectives can lead to greater insight. If you value deep dives into the complexities shaping our world, consider subscribing to our channel. Together, let's advocate for a world driven by peace, cooperation, and mutual respect, where conflicts give way to solutions and shared prosperity. And now for the conclusions. We have witnessed the multifaceted crisis enveloping Russia. The intertwining threads of economic instability, logistical nightmares, and wavering morale in the military depict a nation grappling with the repercussions of prolonged conflict and systemic vulnerabilities. We have also observed the global ramifications of this crisis, impacting energy markets and reconfiguring geopolitical alliances. The ripple effect of economic isolation on society reveals deep discontent and the long-term cost of war. All these factors underscore the crucial need for thoughtful analysis and open discussion in the pursuit of international stability and harmony. Before we wrap up, please take a moment to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. It really helps us out and gets our videos in front of more people. Let us know where you're watching from in the comment section below. We love hearing from our audience.